everybody, in this video I'm going to talk about the worst and most disappointing books that I've read in 2019. So yeah, this is the yearly video where I'm going to trash some of your favorites, maybe. Personally, I always really love to do these kinds of videos because I just love to vent my frustrations about books that I didn't like. It's sort of like a yearly therapy session, you know, because I need to get all those feelings out of the way for a fresh new reading year, if that makes sense. But I know a lot of people also love to watch these videos. It's always nice to know that you're not the only one with a certain negative opinion or like negative and unpopular opinion. And yeah, that is what's going to happen today. I'm going to talk about the worst and also the most disappointing books that I've read this year. There are a couple, and maybe a couple that will maybe shock you a little bit. Let's just see. So first of all, I have two books that weren't necessarily the worst that I read, but definitely the most disappointing. And the first one of that, please don't hate me, but that was Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi. Like a lot of people, I had been waiting for this book for 2 years. It came out at the beginning of December. I read it straight away and I don't think it was like really bad. There were definitely a lot of things in it that I still loved, like the world building and the magic system and the adventure. But overall it was definitely quite disappointing to me, especially with the characters. So I do have an entire video where I talk about it, the things that I feel about this book, but that one does have spoilers. I will leave a link to it down below and up here, but only watch that if you have read the book, because it's full of spoilers, so I don't want to spoil you if you haven't read it. But of course this video we're going to keep spoiler free, although it's hard to talk about what I don't like without spoiling things, but let me try. What I didn't like about Children of Virtue and Vengeance is, first of all, I felt like a couple of characters made some decisions that I really could not get behind. They felt out of character and I could see why certain things or like why certain decisions were made, but I definitely didn't agree with them and I didn't think it made the book better. Also, there were a couple of plot points that were very repetitive. With certain things I felt like these series, like especially with the first book and then with this one as well, certain things went on for too long. Like they became too repetitive. I felt like the book series needed to pick a certain standpoint or like point of view of, I don't know, it needed to make a certain decision. And this book didn't do that, and it became quite boring to read about the same repetitive plot point thing over and over again. It became very frustrating. Yeah, this book overall just didn't feel as wholesome and amazing as the first one to me. Yeah, I gave it 3 stars. First of all, I gave it 4 stars, but when I thought about it more, I took a star off because yeah, there were really some things that I just could not get behind. Yeah, I'm sorry, I really wanted to love it, but there was just some things that I didn't like about it. And then another very disappointing book that I read was The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. Again, please don't hate me too much. Again, a book that I didn't really hate, but it was so disappointing, mainly because this one was so boring. This is the 3rd and final book in the Cruel Prince series, which is, you know, this series about a mortal girl who lives in fairy and gets entangled in all these schemes and things. But The Queen of Nothing felt so much more boring in comparison to the 1st and 2nd book. I felt like there wasn't a lot happening somehow. I didn't feel the same things as with the first 2 books. It wasn't as enjoyable. It was okay, but it felt more like a final chapter of a book than a book on its own, if that makes sense. It wasn't really doing it for me. There were some good scenes, sure, there were some good moments, but overall, nah, no. I do like the Cruel Prince series because it's enjoyable YA, nothing too special, but this one was like quite boring and I was very disappointed by that. I just could not, yeah, I had trouble finishing it actually because it wasn't all that good in my opinion. Not massively bad, I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars, but just, I wasn't invested in it at all. So those were my disappointing reads, but now we're getting on to the worst books of the year. So, you know, get ready because now I'm going on full rants and everything. And the first one, again, might be a bit controversial, but it is the Vanishing Star by Maureen Johnson. The 2nd book in the Truly Devious series, which is a YA detective series. about a girl named Stevie who goes to this school at Ellingham Academy, which is a very prestigious academy, but years ago the Ellingham family was kidnapped. So there's that, and Stevie is really all about true crime, so she wants to solve that mystery. I read Truly Devious. I thought the first half was great, but then the second half became boring. But I was interested enough to read the second book. But the second book, The Vanishing Star, was just... I really did not like it at all whatsoever. First of all, what I didn't like were the characters, because I felt like this book acted like these characters had this major history with each other, that they had been friends forever or enemies forever, that they had these relationships, these connections with each other. The book really acted like that was the case. The thing is, in this book, it's only Halloween on Stevie's first year at the academy, and she didn't know any of the other characters before that. So she's known these people for 2 months, and the book acts like they've grown up together or anything. All of the relationships and the friendships were very much tell and not show, and I don't like that. I really want to feel it. And the second thing that I didn't like is that this book is so dragged out and so boring at times. At the end it became interesting again when finally we were getting back to the actual mystery, but overall this book did not need to exist, basically. Like, this series did not need to be a trilogy. It's so dragged out, and it was so not necessary. I feel like this book would have been a standalone or a duology at most, this series. Which made it boring and way too long, and no, not really a fan of that. And then my last complaint with this book is that in this book series there's this politician named Edward King, and Stevie really hates him. Like, not just dislikes him, but truly hates him and wishes him dead, like repeatedly. She calls him the devil, she truly wishes he were dead. When they are on a plane together, the two of them, she thinks it's probably better for the world if they would crash, like if the world was without him, it would be better. And the thing is, we never really get to hear what Edward King does that makes him, I guess, the devil. All we know is that he's a politician and that Stevie doesn't like him. Everyone acts like it's a given that this politician is like evil incarnated, when we never hear anything about what he does as a politician. Like, the way people are acting around him and the way Stevie thinks about him, you should almost think that he like murders small children for fun or something. We never get any backstory about it. And again, this is definitely a case of telling us but not showing us. If you want to create a antagonist, you know, like a evil character, then you should invest in actually making him an evil character. It's not enough that Stevie tells us that he is the worst man ever and that we never see him do anything. I want to know why. If I'm going to hate a character, I want to have a reason, and not just because Stevie says so. And it's not just hating, it's like she actively wishes him dead, which I think is very serious in general. So, you know, that's quite a big thing in my opinion. So that's like, those are the main reasons why I didn't like The Vanishing Star. And then of course the end, when we got back to the mystery, that was interesting, but I'm not going to read the third book because it's just not worth it to suffer through this entire series only for the mystery parts that are fun, but could have been just one book basically. Next book that I definitely thought was one of the worst of this year is Wild Like Me by Louise Pentland. Let me start off by saying that Louise Pentland is a YouTuber. She is a lifestyle and motherhood YouTuber, and I really love watching her videos. She seems like such a nice woman and an amazing mother, so that's why I read her book, because she always is so nice in her videos, so I have nothing against her. But her book was quite horrible in my opinion. It really wasn't any good at all. Wild Like Me is about a single mother named Robin Wild and her 6-year-old daughter. She feels kind of like an emptiness inside, and she wants basically a relationship. That's the entire plot of this book. And that's also the main complaint that I have, is that Robin Wild is such an unlikable and selfish main character. So Robin Wild, she is a single mother, but her daughter is very sweet and they get along very well. She has supporting friends and family that are always there for her. She has a job that she loves very much and that she's very good at, and she very easily gets promoted every time. But Robin Wild hates her life because she doesn't have a relationship. She talks about how she feels this emptiness and she's not completely happy purely because she doesn't have a relationship. She doesn't have a boyfriend. At first I was hoping that maybe this book would be more about depression and, you know, not feeling happy even when you have friends and family and everything that you can basically want in life, but you still feel depressed. But no, that's not the case. It's all about her wanting a relationship. I don't think her life was any special or interesting or difficult. Like, this book really made it out that her life was so difficult, but it wasn't really. Like, things were going quite smoothly for her. Robin is quite selfish. She only thinks about herself, and she feels very, very sorry for herself because she's not in a relationship. And, you know, sometimes she thinks about her daughter, but apart from that, I don't think she's a great friend to everyone around her. When something doesn't go her way or she's sad about something, she fixes it immediately and everything goes well. So, I don't know, it's just very hard to root for her in general. And yeah, I just cannot get behind a book about a woman who has a great life, but she's still whining about everything because she doesn't have a boyfriend. And at the end it gets a bit better, but overall I still don't think that the message was okay. Also, the writing style isn't amazing. It's very much written like sort of an Instagram caption, and sometimes things were being described and I just know that someone was looking at a picture on Instagram or Pinterest and was describing that picture, especially with things like outfits and food. They were described with much detail, which was very weird and didn't fit with the pacing at all. But it just felt like someone was watching an Instagram picture or something on Pinterest and was just typing what she saw. Wasn't great. It didn't feel alright, and yeah, wasn't a big fan of this book either. Then the next book that I didn't like was I Owe You One by Sophie Kinsella. I was rereading some Sophie Kinsella books this year because I used to love her books when I was younger. This was one that I hadn't read yet, so I read it for the first time. I Owe You One is about a girl named Fixie. Everybody calls her Fixie because she always wants to fix things. And one day she helps out this cute guy in a coffee shop by saving his laptop. And then he says, I owe you one, and then their paths cross again and she owes him one, and yeah, you know where this is going. This book is again quite bad because of its insufferable main character, Fixie. Fixie always wants to fix things. And because her father used to say to her that family is everything, family is the most important thing in life, she lets herself being treated very badly by her brother and sister. Her brother and sister walk all over her. They let her do everything within like their family shop, and they're so mean to her. Her entire family is mean to her, and she lets it happen because family is important, so you should never turn your back against family, and I'm just so not here for it. And of course, you know, at some point she does learn the error of her ways and she gets more of a backbone, but still it was too little too late in my opinion. I also don't like that her mother was being portrayed as the one that Fixie really loved and that appreciated her, but she also wasn't standing up for Fixie at all. She let it just happen. And this main storyline of her just being a doormat basically was so frustrating and annoying that it kind of ruined the book for me. The story, apart from that, you know, is your mediocre love story. I wasn't feeling a lot of chemistry between the romance, love interests and everything. You know, if it wasn't for this horrible main character thing, it would have been okay, but no, it was bad. And it's just, I've never been so frustrated with like reading a book, I think. Well, that's not completely true, but this year, I guess. This one was the most frustrating out of all of them. And then for the last bad book of the year, I have Pieces of Her by Karen Slaughter. Which is funny because I also have a Karen Slaughter book on my best books of the year list, but this one was one of the worst. This book is about a woman named Andrea, and on her 31st birthday she's having lunch with her mother at a restaurant, and then there comes this shooter, and her mother, very surprisingly, is suddenly the one who goes to the shooter and saves everybody, which is very out of character according to Andrea. And then it turns out that her mother has this past that she has kept a secret, which then leads to Andrea, or Andy as she's mostly called, going on a sort of quest. She has to find out some things to help her mother. Yeah, this book, it takes place like in the past and the present. No, it really wasn't that good. Normally Karen Slaughter really writes good, you know, thrillers and murder mysteries and crime stories, but this one felt so bland, and especially with the characters. Both timelines were so, I don't know, boring. I didn't really feel it. It wasn't really interesting. The pacing was so off. The writing style wasn't as her usual writing style, you know, up to her usual standards. Andrea was so sufferable. Basically her entire character arc consists of her being frozen with fear and not doing anything. She was very naive. She barely took any action in her own hands. She felt like she was 16 years old, even though she was 31. She was so dependent on everybody. And her mother's backstory also wasn't the best. It was just, I don't know. This book, it didn't feel like a Karen Slaughter book at all. It really didn't work. I was annoyed with all the character actions and all the characters. And yeah, this is definitely the worst Karen Slaughter book that I've read this year, which is so weird because her other books are so much better. And yeah, I think that is it. That was it for my most disappointing and worst reads of 2019. I hope you sort of enjoyed it. Even if I'm like trashing your favorite book or anything, sorry. I hope you don't hate me too much. I will say overall I didn't read that many bad books this year, so it was quite a good reading year. I think I've gotten better at picking out books that I know I will love. There are some books that I just know I will not love, so I don't read those anymore. I think I've gotten better at that, so it's not too bad this year. Overall, it was quite good. But this was it now for this video, and if you like this video, please go subscribe or maybe give it a thumbs up if you want to. As always, I would really appreciate that, and then hopefully I will see you again very soon in my next video. Bye!